Hello and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world and whatever you're doing right now. I want to interrupt that programming to welcome you to the Chase Jarvis Live Show here on Creative Live. I'm your host, your friend, your pal, Chase Jarvis, and excited to sit down with a very special guest today. And if you're new to the show, this is where I sit down with the world's top creators, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders and do everything I can to unpack their brains with the goal of helping you live your dreams in career, in hobby, and in life. My guest, Peter Diamandis, has been named by Fortune as one of the world's top 50 leaders. He started over 20 companies in the area of longevity, space, venture capital, and education. He's a multiple New York Times bestselling author, the co-founder of Bold Capital Partners. He's currently the founder and executive chairman of the X Prize Foundation, which leads the world in designing and operating large-scale incentive competitions, and the executive founder of Singularity University, something I've always long admired. We are very excited to have him today, so please give a warm Creative Live welcome wherever you are in the world, clapping, tapping, high-fiving. Peter, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming in with us.
Hey, good morning, pal. It's morning where we are right now.
It is indeed. We are on the West Coast of the United States, and very happy to have you on the show. Obviously, we are in crazy times. The fact that you are our guest and you have done so much great thinking, writing, publishing around areas of mindset, of scaling great ideas, of learning, COVID-19, therapeutics, diagnostics, longevity. These are all things that are, it's like your whole world is coming to the tip of the spear right now.
I'm, despite all of the pain in the world right now, my heart goes out to everybody. I'm having an extraordinary blast. Meaning, it's like I'm a kid in a candy store. I'm a 9-year-old kid who's like, can I say holy shit?
Yes, you can say everything you want.
Amazing. it's like, oh my God, there's like so much happening, so much potential, so much extraordinary ability to create, reinvent, solve. It's extraordinary. There's never been like this.
Yeah, never ever. And all as you said, all of this, the unrest, all of the struggles and strife and challenges, all of those are just they're opportunities presenting themselves for complete reinvention and transformation. And when I've read all of your books. Stephen Kotler, longtime friend that has co-authored those books with you, been on the show before. And so your name has been on the show many times, despite you personally not being here, as you've had many stand-ins. And I particularly, one thread, a through point for so much of your work to me is this positivity and mindset. And in fact, if I had my act together, I would have your Twitter feed up in front of me, because you tweeted something, I think this morning, just about this opportunity to create and, co-create and reinvent so much right now. And mindset is at the foundation of that. So I'm hoping you can start off our discussion today with the role that mindset plays, not just in your work, but in the advice that you give to others.
I think mindset is everything. It's everything. It is the single most important thing that differentiates success from failure, from having a blast in life to being in the depths of despair. And let's be clear, right? Unless you're manic all the time, we all have ups and downs. But it's having the right mindset helps you part the clouds and see that guiding star. I spend a lot of time with my different communities, my abundance community, Singularity community, X Prize community, my Future Loop community. And ultimately what I say to people is, if you took away everything from Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, everything, but kept their mindset, they would rebuild and recreate much of what they had. Because it really is a matter of how do you see the world? When you see challenges or opportunities, how do you react to them? And I think that's really important. And I think one thing that people ask me, say, Peter, have you always had that positive abundance and exponential mindset? And the answer is no. You can tend towards it, trend towards it, have some biases towards it, but I built this one step at a time by deciding what I want to let into my brain. Like, who you hang out with, the posters on your wall, what you spend your time on, all of that molds your brain, right? Our brains are 100 billion neurons, 100 trillion synaptic connections, and it's this massive neural net, and it's shaped by your experiences. And so if you want to have, this, people say if you're overweight, you want to become skinny, hang out with skinny people. If you're not in shape, hang out with people who are in good shape. And those, you're the average of the people you spend the most time with. So what do you let into your mind? That's really important.
Can you share with us some of the ways that you actively program that? I mean, you gave some I would call them real, but also very simple examples, posters on your wall who you hang out with. But let's dig one level deeper into Peter's world.
Yeah, so happily. I mean, and there's nothing I want to talk about. I avoid politics and sports, but otherwise I'm good. First of all, I didn't get here in one fell swoop, right? And so nobody, if you're in the beginning of your journey, give yourself permission to get there incrementally, one step at a time, small leaps here and there. But I'm really lucky by virtue of the crowd that I've cultivated, who are my brothers, my sisters, my dearest friends. And it's like I'm always looking to hang out with people who up my game, who stretch me, who inspire me, who allow me to inspire them. Because I think life is a matter of what you give, not what you get. Right. And if people are open to that inspiration, your work here, case in point. The X Prize Foundation, which is an organization I founded, God, it's hard to believe, 25 years ago now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
wow.
insane.
If you'd asked me, I'd have said 10, maybe 12.
Crazy, 25 years ago.
You look great, by the way, for having
listen, I'm a 9-year-old kid in my body, and I'm shooting for 700-year lifespan. We can talk about that later.
Yep.
But I'm the X Prize and the 100 incredible people who work there, and the millions of people who support our work. Just go to xprize.org to learn more. We flip the conversation and say, how do you solve that problem? Not can it be solved. I believe that every single problem on the planet can be solved by the convergence of the right mindset, the right technology, and capital. And so it's how do you solve it, right? And when can you get it solved? Not if can you get it solved. So that's that. Singularity University. My blogs. I put out, if you go to diamandis.com, I put out a blog every week, which is focused on the abundance mindset and exponential mindsets. One thing I was just mentioning to you in the beginning, I'm so angry at the news media because the news media, in my mind, I call CNN the crisis news network or the constantly negative news network. I don't have a good acronym for Fox yet. But it's
I know what that first letter is going to be, though.
Yeah, I'm with you there. You got my brain going.
Sorry.
But if you think about it, right, there's somebody in the newsroom or an editor at the newspaper who is like deciding what you're going to see. And our brains evolved on the savannas of Africa hundreds of thousands, millions of years ago. Back then, if you missed a piece of good news, too bad. You missed a piece of bad news, your genes were out of the gene pool. And so we evolved an ancient piece of our temporal lobe called the amygdala that scans everything we see and hear for negative news. And if we see a piece of negative news, it puts us on red alert. And so we pay 10 times more attention to negative news than positive news. So if you open the newspaper or watch any news network, it's 10-to-1 negative to positive. And the question you have to ask yourself, is that the way the world really is? Is it all just negative news, or is that a selection bias? And I believe it's selection bias. There's amazing news out there, but good news networks don't succeed. So 3 years ago, I set out on a journey to reinvent how I get my news, how I get my information. I built a company. We just are rolling it out now into beta. It's called
Is that
Future.
Future Loop? Yeah.
Future LOOP, futureloop.com. And what it does is it actually scans all the news around the world, science journals, social media, newspapers, magazines, everything. And it looks at it and it rates everything from a quality of the news to news bias to positive. So semantic, is it a positive forward-looking piece or is it a negative piece? And then it's looking for convergence of technologies. Is this news piece looking at how AI and robotics and 3D printing are coming together, and then how it focuses on industries or interests? So you can put in any subject like clothing or ceramics or painting, whatever you want, and it will tell you how that industry is being reinvented by technology in an abundance and exponential mindset. And then we also created some fascinating things. I created a version of avatars. So we are able to create avatars of Elon Musk or Ray Kurzweil or Jeff Bezos or myself. And so you can look at the news through their eyes. So it's like we'll be rolling this out in a couple of weeks. So it will show you, okay, this article is selected by virtual Elon and upvoted by virtual Peter. And it becomes sort of a means by which you can see the news through the lenses that you want. And it just helps me see the news in a much more constructive, positive sense. So, I mean, those it's interesting. People talk about AI being biased, right? But the algorithms are not biased. It's the data you feed the algorithms that's biased. If you feed an algorithm only dog images, and you show it a cat, it says, oh, it's a dog. And our brains are the same way. It's what you feed our brains that biases us. So anyway, that's my
fascinating. And as we stay grounded in this concept of mindset, as you said, the foundation to everything. You said we moved quickly through it because we got right into the actual meat, but you said it's like what you feed your brain, and it's very similar to I'm understanding what you're saying is you are choosing whether you choose your friends, whether you how you choose the news, and in a world where Future Loop is not everywhere and ubiquitous quite yet. I'm sure it will be in 6 months if your track record says anything. But we are programming ourselves, and I'm wondering if you can. Are there? You cited like on the horizon, there's the news and our friends. What about internally? What I like to say that the most important words in the world are the ones we say to ourselves.
Yeah.
And so,
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So give me a lens that you up.
I wake up every morning, and in the shower, I have my mantras that I have, right? A lot of this, one of my closest friends on the planet, someone I think the world of as a mentor, as a friend, as a co-conspirator, is Tony Robbins. So Tony and I have a couple of companies together. We're writing a book together called Life Force, which will be a late 2021 book about extending the healthy lifespan. But if anybody's ever gone to any of his programs, God knows he's like the not going to events is like slaying him, because he's a man who's had like 30 countries in 30 days, with 10,000, 25,000 people in the audience with him. So he's definitely having a different experience of life right now. But I have what I call my massively transformative purpose. So in the morning, whether it's in the shower or before, and it's 2 or 3 times a day, and it goes like this. I see, hear, feel, and know that the purpose of my life is to inspire and guide entrepreneurs to create a hopeful, compelling, and abundant future for humanity. And I say that over and over and over again. So what it comes out is, okay, for me, it's about inspiring and guiding entrepreneurs. All right, that's the means by which I impact the planet. And how do I want to inspire and guide them? I want to help them, support them, encourage them to create a hopeful, compelling, and abundant future for humanity. Because I think ultimately, that's what we need. We need to see hope. We need to see not only hope, but a compelling future for ourselves, and to create an abundant future for humanity. And this idea of abundance, we're going from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. And my dear friend Stephen Kotler, who we both have a tremendous love and respect for, we wrote a book that changed my life. It was one of these ideas that came into mind, it was like, wow, that's big. And then I called Steve. I said, Stephen, we have to do this book on abundance. He goes, I've been thinking about the same thing. And it's the notion that technology is a force that takes whatever was scarce and makes it abundant. And the simplest way to say that is, as more and more people are increasing in wealth and capability, some people say, oh my God, I have to take the pie and slice into thinner and thinner slices now. And it's like, no, that's bullshit. No, we're going to bake more pies. Mm-hmm. It's like there's all the energy and water, and AI is going to give us abundant healthcare and education and all of these things. And it's, again, comes back to mindset.
It's fascinating when this is a common thread amongst all of the greatest thinkers that I've studied in my life across all kinds of different industries. You mentioned Tony. I've been a guest of Tony's at many of his experiences. But regardless of industry, it seems mindset is the common thread at the highest performers, and not just people who create success for themselves, but as you know, Tony likes to connect success and fulfillment, because what is success without fulfillment is hell, right? Because you've done the things and you don't derive the personal and community benefits from them. So it's fascinating to me that mindset is the thread, and yet how and why are we so ill-equipped as a culture? Why is this not the most important, guiding principle that we teach our children from a very, very young age? Why is that the case?
Because we, as a species and as a culture, for the majority of human existence, it's been about survival. And it's been around just surviving against, pandemics in the past, or starvation, or getting shelter, and so forth. It's just now that we have the luxury of being able to really take a vacation from survival. But I would also say that a lot of the teachings of Buddhism and some of the practices in Hinduism and so forth do talk about mindset. Buddhism is all about mindset. I grew up as a Greek Orthodox Christian, from my family culture and so forth. But as I read, I'm like, oh, I really actually like being a Buddhist. It's like we can start to choose what philosophies and what mindsets work better for us.
Yeah, that makes sense. The fact that on an evolutionary scale, the freedom to not be surveying the horizon for saber-toothed tigers, we're on the front end of that. And so, is it your belief? And maybe you can, tie in the Singularity University. Is that one of the reasons that the Singularity University exists? Is this part of your contribution to education, and why the topics that the Singularity University puts a lens on are so related to human potential and are so optimistic? Or what's how do you look at the role of the Singularity University in this mindset and a new education because that's why people are listening and watching right now. Honestly, they want to learn, and they want to learn from the world's best. And I'm trying to beat this drum of mindset, and because it's such a continuous thread across all of our guests and all of the top performers, and you touch so many industries. Let's talk about what you've done for education and why.
So thank you, and let me define what Singularity University is. So I had started my first university. It's funny to say that. When I was in grad school at MIT, I started with two co-founders, Todd Hawley and Bob Richards. something called the International Space University. And it's still going strong in Strasbourg, France, and very proud of it. And it's a multinational, multicultural, multidisciplinary university for the graduate study of space. And space is now becoming a thing, becoming a vogue. 12 years ago, I'm backpacking through Patagonia in Chile, and I bring one book with me, and it's Ray Kurzweil's book that had just come out called The Singularity is Near. And it's this big ass book, and it's like weighs a ton in my backpack. And it's like, okay, I'm going to read this book. And as I'm reading this book, Ray lays out all of the different exponential technologies and where they are. And 12 years ago was ancient history at the speed of change. And I'm like, I know a lot of this stuff, but the way Ray juxtaposed it all and put it together, it's fascinating. And I said, there's no place on the planet you can go to really learn about all of these areas: computation, sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology, augmented virtual reality, blockchain. And there should be a place that you can go. And so I come back, I just recruited Ray onto my board at XPRIZE. I have a now famous dinner with him, and I pitch him. I said, Ray, we should create a Singularity University that allows people to learn about all of these things, not go, because right now you go to MIT, you go to Harvard, you go to Stanford, you go to wherever on the planet you go and you do a deep dive into one of these areas. You become the world's expert, not on bacteria, not on a bacteria genome, not on a plasmid, not on a gene, on a specific promoter sequence in a gene, in a bacteria, in the ground. It's like you're so hyper-focused, and that's great, but I wanted a place where a person can go and see what's materializing, where's the convergences of these technologies. And we shook hands on it, and we kicked it off. And it's a place right now in SU, given everything going on, is going digital more and more. But if you go to su.org, you can see it started as a nonprofit, and then it became so successful, we flipped it into a for-profit just to be able to be more agile and be able to incubate companies out of it. And abundance.digital is my segment of it that I mentor entrepreneurs in. And ultimately, I think people need to understand these are the most powerful technologies, no matter if you're an artist, a musician, a physician, or whatever career you want. AI is going to transform your business, AR and VR and computation and quantum computing. And we're not trying to turn people into PhDs that understand the physics. It's like you should understand like what's possible and where is it going, and what are the convergences that are going to change things up, because every industry is going to change. Every industry. Not in 100 years, 50 years, this decade.
This community is largely about creativity and entrepreneurship. And when a lot of folks think about creativity, this may be a little redundant for, people who are longtime fans of the show, but for context in our conversation, creativity is not popsicle sticks and pipe cleaners and glitter that we're taught in second grade. Creativity with the capital C is that's our ability to solve problems and to put two new and things that used to not go together to be useful. And so if you're spending a lot of time obviously focused in talking about technology and our understanding of it, but isn't there a if you're sequencing these things, isn't understanding and knowing the power of creativity and you as an individual's ability to create or co-create new things versus being sort of this cork in the tide, like, oh, I'm along for the ride. And so how would you share with people in our community this mindset of possibility that you are not a cork in the tide, that you have to take responsibility for co-creating the world. You talked about mind, or we spent the first 15 minutes talking about mindset, and that's actually a creativity exercise. I'm curious to get your lens on creativity as basically a precursor for where you go to school, what job you have, and what you decide to pursue. I'm wondering what your comment there.
I love that. So first of all, I think the single most important thing anybody needs to do is discover their passion and their purpose. I think it's one of the most important things. I spend a lot of time talking to entrepreneurs about what is your massively transformative purpose. There's a great quote by Mark Twain. He says, there are two important days in your life: the day you were born and the day you find out why. Right? So I feel blessed and lucky. When I was 8 and 9 years old, I was born in the early 60s. The Apollo program happened. And at the same time, that amazing scientific documentary called Star Trek came into existence. And the interesting dissonance and reinforcement of like, wow, this is what we're doing right now. We're on the moon. Holy shit, that's extraordinary. And then Star Trek is like, this is where we're going. And that lit me up. And that became my purpose. My parents, born in the island of Lesbos, ended up, my dad became a physician, moved here to the US. My mom should have been a doctor. She ran his office, and it was always expected I'd become a doctor. And so that was like, Mom, I want to be an astronaut. That's nice, son, but you're going to be a doctor. And so I went to medical school to make them happy. I was running 2 companies my 4th year of medical school, a launch company and that space university I mentioned. But because I was fueled by that passion, that purpose. And so I think the most important thing that anybody needs to do is connect with that passion, that purpose, to discover it, to let it blossom in you. And then once you know, that's your canvas. And it can change over time, right? Mine early was space. I retain that still to some degree, but then it turned to what are the world's biggest problems and how do we solve them? X Prize and Singularity were born out of that. And then making 100 years old and you're 60 has been sort of my passion and purpose for the last 5 years, I guess. As you get older, your desire to add an extra 30 healthy years sort of like looms more significantly in life. But I think honestly, getting connected with your passion is like the most important thing.
How do we do it? Because everyone's saying it. Right. Yeah. I've been saying it. Everyone, once you find your purpose, it's like the tractor beam. What used to feel like pushing rocks uphill now feels like running downhill. The world is happening for you rather than to you. But how? How do you discover this?
So there's a few tricks that I play with people. And first is you have to be willing to try things on and be clear that you can change. You gotta try something out for a week, a month. You don't have to commit for the rest of your life. Your passion can change over time, but it's like what feels right for you. So the first thing is, what did you want to be as a kid before your parents or the world told you couldn't, right? Because passion is about connecting with energy, emotion. So it's like there's got to be an emotion behind it. There has to be love, awe, hate, anger, whatever it is. There's a deep emotion that fuels that, because ultimately doing anything big and bold in the world is hard. And if you don't have that emotional energy, we're emotional beings, you will give up before you get there. The stuff that I tried just to make money, it was empty and meaningless, and I gave up. And it was the stuff that was truly the kid in me, or I've got to solve this. This is awesome. I'm so excited to be a piece of this equation. That stuff, when you hit a brick wall, you rub off the hurt, and then you get up and you keep going again because the passion is still there. So what do you want to do as a kid? If I gave you $1 billion and said, I want you to change the world, you can't spend this on yourself, what would you do with it? right? I mean, those are a few sort of directional games to play. And then ultimately, where technology plays in this is technology is going to enable us to become the ultimate creators. So imagine in the future, we all have a version of Jarvis from Iron Man, an AI software shell that surrounds us. And I say, I want to create a thing that that is able to hold my coffee, keeps it warm. I don't want to handle, and I can like describe mentally what I want, and the AI is able to visualize it in my augmented reality field. And I say, no, could you add this and add that, and can you make it like so the coffee doesn't cool off? So I don't know about thermal coefficients, but you do. And can you tell me how much would be to make? Oh, it's $1. Can you make it cheaper in any way? And you can describe your intentionality. And then the technology wrapped around that will then determine what the right materials are, the right tool paths for 3D printers. And you can say, great, that's it. Can you please make it for me? Right? That's ultimately, all of us become creators by just connecting our mindset on our intentionality of what do we desire? Right? So all you have to know is, what do you desire? Can you dream big and desire, and then use technology to convert your desires into physical visualizations and so forth? I mean, there's tools like Photoshop that are part of the equation on the way there, right? Or Word that helps you spell right, because I define someone who can't spell a word 2 or 3 different ways as not being creative.
That brings your description of that brings joy. In my book, Creative Calling, the first of the 4 parts is about imagination, and we've sort of lost our imagination, our ability to think big, and that was part of what was inspiring in reading Bold, the ability to think in a big, bold way versus the constrained way that we're taught. And so right now there's someone who's listening or watching, and they're like, yeah, but. And they're listing all of the sort of practical reasons that they can't do this, citing things like mortgage and 3 kids and no time. And what's your prescription to those folks? Is it sort of go back to that dreaming big? Well, this is where people are stuck.
And I respect that, right? And there's the reality of life. Like, I lost my job. I've got 3 kids. Don't tell me about, thinking big and so forth. And, respect, I get that. I remember, not too long ago, there was a moment in time where I had bought something, and this is like, a dozen years ago, and I couldn't pay my bills that next month, and I had to return it. And it was like, oh, that hurt. And so I never want to forget that, because it grounds me in that regard. But the most important thing was, when you find your passion, you will find increments of time to work on things, to do things, to imagine things. And people love hanging out with people who are happy. People love hanging out with people who've got a great mindset. No one wants to hang out with someone who's a Debbie Downer and depressed all the time. It's reality. We all go through that. But if you can eke your way up to be more excited and when you find something you're passionate about, you speak about it in an excited fashion. You speak about it, and people are attracted to you. And all of these things add onto it. So it all comes back for me of, what are you passionate about? Can you find your passion? Can you have conversations with people? Can you go and read about as many people and ask people, what are you passionate about? How did you find your passion? Get case studies and stories and so forth, and try things on. And don't be afraid, because, oh my God, what if I get it wrong? Bullshit. There's no right or wrong. It's like, what feels good for you.
It seems whimsical to people who haven't bought into it yet, but that what feels good to you is, again, I've always sort of deconstructed my successes and failures and the successes and failures of people who've been on the show and at Creative Live, and that, the cultivating the energy, the passion, um, the framework for doing all of the stuff is literally what lights you up. So I'm going to say something to you. I'm going to say a phrase, and I was hoping that you would then elaborate on it.
Sure.
The best way to predict the future is to create it yourself.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that we are all, that we manifest our future, and that we are more powerful than ever before. People don't realize how powerful they are. We are powerful.
Say more on that.
beings. First of all, if you think about today as an individual living in the year 2020 into 2021, you have access to all the information in the world. Literally, I love, saying, okay, Siri, what's the gross national product of Ghana?
She's thinking.
In 2018, the gross national income of Ghana was about $63.4 billion per year.
So, I mean, it's like you can ask any question and get the answer. That's extraordinary. You have access to all the entertainment and knowledge on the planet for free. I mean, this used to be only resident in the hands of the wealthiest kings and queens and billionaires, and even what they knew was minuscule. You have access to, spin up computational power if you know how to find it. So ultimately, we're more powerful than ever before. We're able to reach out and connect to people. And one of the most scarce things is the passionate, committed mind. So it really is finding your passion and getting committed to it. And once you do that, magical things happen. Because one of the things that's important is you have to let everyone know what your passion is.
Boom. Huge.
Because when you communicate that, then the universe comes to you. Your friend goes, hey, I didn't know that. That's awesome. Did you know that Bill or Trish over here knows this and that? And all of a sudden things start coming to you. You become a magnet for those things. So, creating the future is by intentionality, by saying, and it's magical. It really, truly is. I don't believe in the bullshit of like magical thinking. I do believe in being clear about this is what I want to create. This is where I want to go. And I'm going to work towards that. I'm going to find people who can help me on the way. I'm going to read about it. I'm going to learn about it, and creating that future. And by the way, sometimes it takes a decade. A lot of the things in my life, I jokingly say, we talked about this a little bit. I said it's overnight success after 11 years of hard work. Yeah.
Isn't it true that the science supports this idea of manifestation, at a quantum physics level? I think for the folks right there that are like, oh, I don't need another version of the movie The Secret. Thanks, Chase. Thanks, Peter. Give me something real. And can you speak about this, from the science of the brain and the science of quantum mechanics?
Well, the science of the brain is one that we are constantly bombarded by, thousands of times more information than we can consume in our brain. And we have cognitive biases that filter what we see and how we process it. And if you become clear about the vision of where you want to go, you will pick up trace information, little intonations and conversations, and a sentence that you read that will lead you in those directions. These are breadcrumbs that you would otherwise ignore, right? Without a target, you'll miss it every time. And so just being able to, you're bombarded by information and people and connections and so forth. And we don't realize how much of that falls to the ground fallow. But if you're clear about what you're looking for, you will say something in a conversation that will elicit something else, that will lead to something else. And all of a sudden, wow, how did that materialize? How did that happen? It didn't just happen magically. It happened because you were looking for it. and because you were putting that out into the universe, either by conversation or how you decide to spend your time. And that, for me, is very real. It's very real.
This notion that so much of the best things in the world are a 10 or 11-year overnight success has a lot of people worried, especially, again, a whole range of ages listen and watch the show. And for someone who's later in that life arc, there's a panic of, I don't have 10 years. And I'm going to use this as a creative segue to longevity. And you made a joke earlier, if you're 19 and listening to the show, it's like everyone would agree that you have time, although, life is uncertain. And obviously we're in a crazy time right now where, that certainty is showing itself in a lot of ways. But let's just agree for a second that, wait a minute, not only is life long, but that is the only way, commitment to something you actually care about over time. It's the over time part that most people whiff on. So as you're talking with your hands here, again, for those who are listening rather than watching, they miss this benefit, but I can see what I think is an Oura ring on your finger.
Yeah, my venture fund, I'm very proud, is one of the early investors in the Oura ring. Yeah.
Great. I wear that as well.
But you can't, can't measure it, you can't improve it. So
well, here we are. We want to pursue these things. We're nervous about how long it takes to create the success that we want. And sometimes it can take, to your words, 11 years. I haven't got 11 years, but you do. And if you don't think you do, talk to us about the future of longevity. I know you've written about this extensively. You are active in it. You made a comment earlier about adding 30 years to your life.
So awesome. The average human lifespan for most of human history was like 28 or 30. You would have a baby at age 13 when you went to puberty. And 100,000 years ago, by the time you were 26, 27, 28, your baby was having a baby. And back when food was scarce, before Whole Foods and McDonald's were around, the last thing you wanted to do was steal food from your baby's mouth or your grandchildren's mouth, because it didn't perpetuate the species. So the best thing you could do was die. And so we didn't develop a long lifespan past our reproductive age. And but it turns out that there are species of life on Earth. I remember when I was in medical school, I watched a TV show on long-lived sea life, that certain species of whales could live 200 years, like the bowhead whale. The Greenland shark will do 400 or 500 years. Sea turtles will do 500 years, as long as 700 years. And I'm like, holy shit, why can they? Why can't we? And I remember thinking to myself, it's either a software problem or a hardware problem. And we're going to solve those things. And so we're finally at a point now where we're beginning to truly understand the software and the hardware of the human body. And so there is a multitude of companies, a number of which I'm invested in or have had the pleasure to co-found and or advise, that are in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials of incredible breakthroughs. And this is, I mentioned earlier that I'm writing a book with Tony Robbins. It's called Life Force, and it's about all of these different, what are the technologies out there that are going to increase vitality and health span. This is not about being in a wheelchair at 120 years old. This is about having the aesthetics, the cognition, the mobility at 100 that you had at 50 or 60, right? So that you feel good, you look good, you're moving around, you're enjoying life and such. And I think that we really are going to add 10, 20, maybe 30 healthy years over the course of the next 10 to 20 years. The rate of technology is expanding that fast. And so there's a concept that that Ray Kurzweil and Aubrey de Grey talk about called longevity escape velocity. And the concept is the following, that for every year that you're alive, there's going to be so science is adding lifespan every year to your life. by terms of breakthroughs of reducing cancer, heart disease, neurodegenerative disease. And there's going to be a point that at some point where science is adding more than a year to your lifespan for every year that you're alive. And then it becomes divergent. And I truly believe kids today have a indefinite lifespan. If they choose that, and things get very strange, not 50 years from now, not 30 years from now, 20 years from now, as we are seeing AI impact everything and the speed at which AI is impacting the world. And I'm tracking this in my work through Future Loop and others. It's insane. It really is like, holy shit, this is faster than I ever imagined. It's like incredible things are coming our way. So there's a multitude, from stem cells to what are called senolytic medicines that kill zombie cells in the body, senile cells, to Wnt pathway manipulations, to vaccines, to augmenting your immunity, augmenting your cellular repair mechanisms. There's a multitude of different companies, and it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and you still can't take it with you. So I do think that if you keep yourself in good, reasonable health, and there are things you can do right now, just for everybody listening, the basics still apply. Can you get 7 or 8 hours of sleep every day, right? So I used to try and minimize my sleep, and I'm yes, the Aura Ring comes out, and there's a great book by Matt Walker called Why We Sleep. I commend it to everybody. And after reading that book, I prioritize sleep. I don't shortchange it. If evolution could have gotten rid of sleep, it would have, because we're so exposed during sleep. We're so unproductive during sleep. It is fundamental to your health. The second thing is exercise. The third thing is diet. I try and do intermittent fasting as much as I can. So I don't have breakfast, even though I was taught growing up it's the most important meal of the day. I try and do a 15 to 20 hour fast every day. And then mindset, right? If you think you're screwed and you're going to die, you may very well. If you are excited about life and you're excited about living to see what's next, that attitude is fundamentally important. So science is coming strong. In the interim, sleeping, dieting, exercising, mindset, super critical.
It's crazy how, simple but not easy, right? It's not like you're saying you need to get this rare root from sub-Saharan Africa and grind it into a powder and
snort it.
And snort it, right? You were saying sleep 8 hours, and yet as a culture we're slow to adopt those things. And you mentioned diet, you mentioned intermittent fasting. We've got episodes galore on that. I think a lot of folks have gone very, very deep, so I won't tread where others are experts. But anything else that you are doing with your diet that is a simple takeaway besides?
Yeah, I mean, I've gone all
IF.
vegan. I've gone vegan 100%. I was pescatarian, eating fish and so forth. But my biggest risk genetically is cardiovascular disease. And so I've just decided to pummel it. So I've gone all vegan. I do my best to reduce sugar intake as low as possible.
When you say sugars, are those artificial sugars or natural sugars as well?
Artificial sugars as much as possible. I love ice cream, but I'm luckily lactose intolerant, so I reduce that to my, but all sugars, and including trying, just spiking my insulin levels by eating too much fruit. And there is the point to be made. I don't want to live long if I hate my life, So it's all a matter of, there's a phrase my dad taught me when I was bon methodon eideston from ancient Greek, which means everything in moderation. And so, I'm moderate about being extreme there, but I have gone vegan because I think it's just, you can get all the protein you need and it's healthier for you. And then I have supplements that I take. And at the end of the day, for me, it's about giving my body the best chance to intercept the technologies that are coming.
I like that. It's a framework for intercepting the technologies that are coming. For people who want to know more about that, we'll let them dive into your individual works, books, and whatnot. But
if they go to my website, diamandis.com, I have all my blogs there. And if you just search on supplements, I've written blogs about what I'm taking. I think there are ways to boost your immune system, especially now in the age of COVID-19. Maintaining a strong immune system is critically important.
So we talked about longevity, of course. We talked about change, and let's smash those things together now. So if we're going to see a lot of change over an increasingly short amount of time, that means the amount of change that we will see, of course, across the horizon of a life is extraordinary. You already painted a picture of the Jarvis AI.
Yeah.
But you also said something in that last line of thinking around what we're going to see change in the next 10 years. And it sounded pretty radical. You're going to add 30 years of life in the next 10 to 20 years of our time. And people who are just being born now are potentially, going to live forever. Now, that sounds radical to someone who's not, embedded in the science and maybe doesn't surround themselves with yourself and Tony and others. So,
in our last 5 minutes here, I'll just tell you some of the stuff that I think is coming. This is the latest book that Stephen Kotler and I wrote called The Future is Faster Than You Think. And in the back of it, we talk, the book talks about the next 10 years of how we're going to transform healthcare and education, entertainment, finance, insurance, real estate, retail, every industry. The back of the book, we talk about some of the really interesting stuff, not 100 years, but the next 30 years, 40 years. I mean, first of all, we're about to take the human race into space, right? Elon and Bezos both are guaranteeing that, and that's been an area of passion for me. Millions of years from now, whatever we evolve into, we're going to go back historically. These next 20 years is the moment in time that the human race moved off the planet into space, right? It's like the equivalent of the lungfish coming out of the oceans onto land. We're about to bud Gaia into the cosmos. The other stuff that's really, for me, the most fascinating is that we're on the verge of connecting our brains to the cloud, right? The whole idea of brain-computer interface, the idea of our 100 billion neurons, 100 trillion synaptic connections are limited in our skull because of the size of the vaginal birth canal. Our brains can't get bigger. But the same way that my cell phone, when it needs to do a complicated problem, it doesn't do it on the processing on the computer, on my cell phone. It goes to the edge of the cloud on 4G, soon to be 5G, does the processing there and sends the answer back. Well, we're on the verge of connecting our brain to the cloud, where if I want to understand quantum physics or whatever, I can go to the cloud, think and Google, think and understand. And even more interestingly, if you're connected, your brain to the cloud, I'm connected, and other people are connected, then all of a sudden there's a meta-intelligence. I love Star Trek. The only thing I'm sad that Gene Roddenberry did was create the Borg as an evil species.
Thank you for for being a bright and positive voice in a time that's tough for so much of humanity right now. I know that you're doing a ton of work with therapeutics and diagnostics for COVID-19. We don't have time to get into that, but send us off into your picture of the possibility of the future of someone who's listening right now. Tell us a story in a minute about what you believe is possible for a watcher, a listener, over the course of the next 5, 10 years of this one precious life that they have.
I believe that we are able to connect with people who share our passions independent of where you live. It used to be that where you were born determined everything. Your access to books, to communications capability, to whether you were black or white, what religion you were part of. We have become unencumbered from that. We're living on a planet, and I believe that every person has the potential to rise to the abilities of their dreams. And that's what I'm working for, a world in which we can meet the needs of every man, woman, and child. That if you're clear about what you want to do, how you want to impact, what your dreams are, now, because they can change in the future, you can connect with other people who have those similar dreams and passions and create magic that we can truly invent the future we want to live into. And there's nobody's permission you need to ask. It's a function of just when you hit a roadblock, pick it up, and driven by your passion, by that North Star that guides you every day to just keep on keeping on. And it may take a decade, but you'll get there, and there's joy in that and meaning in that. And anyway, pal, a pleasure. Thank you
so much. Is there anywhere you'd like to direct people? You've been a bright light.
I think if you want to follow my work, if you go to diamandis.com, I put out a blog every week on these mindsets, on the breakthroughs that I'm seeing. Futureloop.com is where I'm reinventing how you get the news that shapes your mindset. Abundance.digital is where I mentor entrepreneurs. Those are the three things. Anyway,
thank you so much for being on the show, Peter. Have a wonderful weekend, and looking forward to consuming everything you're putting out in the next chapter. Good luck.
Thanks for being on the show. Best to everybody listening. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.